The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone. This is Bob Drakowski, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar. We're very appreciative for your participation today, and we look forward to sharing best practices and extremely useful information for your organization. Today, we'll be discussing how to gain unparalleled supply chain visibility. Every day, we work with supply chain executives, and every day they're looking for ways to address their significant challenges that they have today, implement best practices, and then leverage innovation. We're going to cover all of those with you today. So we want to keep our webinars very interactive with everybody that's attending. We understand that your time is valuable, and we are really going to make sure today that we make the most of it. Throughout the webinar, we're going to ask some poll questions, so please go ahead and participate in our polls. And post questions that you have for our keynote speakers today. We'll make sure that we get them addressed in our Q&A session. And if we have too many questions, we'll make sure we follow up with you one-to-one afterwards to make sure that your question, every question is valuable, is answered. One last note, and that is we are recording today's webinar. So if you want to revisit our webinar later today or in the future, or if you want to share that with other colleagues that you have at your organization, you're welcome to do so. So let's look at our agenda that we have for today. We will discuss supply chain, your supply chain, the challenges, the trends, the opportunities that exist today. Our veteran supply chain experts will present the top 5 challenges that many of you are facing today. But more importantly, you know some of those challenges that exist. The question is, what can you do about the challenges? So we're going to present to you best practices on addressing those challenges. And we're also going to give you very specific client examples, the before and after. What was the challenge before? What is the aftermath, the gain, if you will, after the challenge was addressed? Our sponsor today is CloudLogic, and CloudLogic is an innovator in the supply chain visibility space and offers the CloudLogic platform. So we're not going to take time today to provide a detailed demonstration of the solution, but I'd like to share with you 5 key takeaways, strategic benefits for the platform. And we hope that after our webinar today, one of the options that you'll have is to actually follow up and receive a demonstration. The platform provides these 5 strategic benefits. First is that you want to be in a position where you can make confident decisions. When you have end-to-end visibility to your supply chain, across the front end, all the way through the back end, it enables you to make confident decisions. The second strategic value that you're going to receive from a platform such as CloudLogic is that you can start getting higher return from your resources, your people. Because we're going to be talking about one of the most important issues you have, which is how many people are actually involved in terms of coordinating and providing visibility to your supply chain, and how can they be more efficient, more effective in terms of what they're doing. The third area is getting better control over carrier relationships. And that means improved insight into shipping status, terms, pricing, and pricing comparisons. The fourth area for many of our clients that they're looking for from the CloudLogic platform is the ability to negotiate better terms and prices with carriers and suppliers. That's going to lead to better profitability. It's going to lead to better margins, and it's going to lead to accurate invoicing that you have on the back end for your shipments. And then finally, the platform has been designed from the ground up to integrate with ERP, logistics, TMS systems that you may have today. So it's totally complementary to your back-end ERP systems such as SAP and Oracle. So let me go ahead and introduce our speakers today. The first is Tom Cagney. Tom is the CEO for CloudLogic. And he's a visionary in the industry. He's been in the industry for over 30 years, and he's got a tremendous amount of experience, hands-on experience in terms of supply chain, transportation, and logistics management. As a visionary CEO, he not only leads CloudLogic as CEO, but he also has been CEO for Seiko Global Logistics as well as Aerostar Global. Joining Tom today to speak with you is Jalen Wallace. Jalen is the Vice President of Product and Customer Success at CloudLogic, and she has more than 20 years experience in the logistics and supply chain space, specializing in the aerospace and defense industries. So some of the companies that Jalen has worked at to lead logistics initiatives is Northrop Grumman, Bombardier, and Triumph. We're excited to have both Tom and Jalen speak today, and I'll turn the floor over to Tom.
Thank you, Bob, for that very nice introduction. I would also like to welcome everyone to today's webinar. Again, we know that you're all very busy, but we hope that you find your time with us will be worthwhile and informative. So let's talk about why we're here today. Let's talk about our favorite topic, the supply chain. So there are a lot of reasons that many supply chains are not working on several levels as well as they could. Let's face it, there are many things that are just simply out of our control, things that can disrupt our supply chain and easily tip it out of balance. Obviously, we all know that the pandemic created instant chaos in a variety of ways and instantly brought global attention to how delicate our supply chains can be. But we also know that, hey, look, way before COVID and long after COVID, there's certainly just many challenges that we confront on a daily basis. They range anywhere from weather delays, labor strikes, equipment shortages, geopolitical problems, trade barriers. There's any number of ways that the supply chain can get disrupted. So when our supply chain's out of balance, many things happen. Costs increase, efficiencies decrease, and margins are significantly eroded. So delighting our customers under those circumstances truly becomes a moving target. Again, there are any number of things that are out of our control. Today, let's talk about the areas where we can actually have an impact, where we can actually make a difference. Let's talk about the measures that we can take to mitigate some of those challenges. So what we all want to do as supply chain professionals is to move from a reactive to a proactive approach, from too much firefighting to best practices, practices that lead to resiliency, stability, and sustainability in our supply chain. So like you, many of our clients have various ERP systems. They use SAP, Oracle, or any number of business management solutions. That's where CloudLogic can help you. That's where we come in. Our solution complements what your existing systems provide. We deliver real-time data and streamlined processes where we empower that proactive approach with solutions that drive decision-making through visibility and by measuring performance and by measuring accountability. So that's my introduction. Let me turn it back now to Bob. He's going to introduce our first poll question.
Thank you, Tom. If you'd be kind enough to participate in our first poll question, I really appreciate that. The question is, what is your biggest supply chain issues? And let me go ahead and launch the poll for you. And if you could opt in, I would appreciate that. We're going to share the results real time with our audience today. But let's go ahead and this is all, check all that apply. So are you really looking for better visibility to your supply chain issues? Are you looking primarily to control escalating freight spend, especially in today's environment? Are you looking to eliminate wasted time that you have across different departments in terms of coordinating? Are you looking to address your carrier and supplier performance and looking for better and innovative ways to benchmark and compare and negotiate? Or are you looking to better manage the resources that you have in place today across the different functional teams at your company and streamline that process? So if you could just opt in here, and what we'll do is we'll share the results in just a few moments. Just keep the poll open. Make sure everybody has an opportunity to participate because your input is really important to us. It always is, and we're really interested in what's top of mind from your perspective. Okay, So thank you, everyone. Let me go ahead and close the poll and share the. So for our audience today, thank you everybody for really participating. 57% of you stated that your biggest need is in supply chain visibility, which is really the key topic for today. 29% stated that you need to control escalating freight cost. That would be a major challenge. The second and third is both the need to eliminate wasted time and cost and better manage resources. And finally, that there is a need to better address carrier and supplier performance. So thank you for participating with that. It's great to get that information and input from you. And now I'm going to turn the webinar back over to Tom.
Thanks, Bob. Well, I guess there's no real surprises in that poll. I mean, visibility is something that is top of mind for everybody. And of course, not a day goes by that we're not trying to drive costs out, whether it's with carriers or suppliers or however we can in an organization. So thanks everybody for participating in that poll. So as a supply chain professional, there's just a lot of challenges. Challenges in effectively managing and optimizing your supply chain. Every client's unique, but there's some problems that cross over into every industry. Over the years, working with our many clients, we kind of consistently found that there are 5 main challenges that come to top of mind. Supply chain disruption, controlling the freight spend, the communication barrier, carrier and supplier performance, and insights and visibility into that data. We kind of see these challenges as, we call them the top 5 for many of our clients. And we're going to jump into all of these today. Now, you may have some other challenges that are bigger and more important to you. If so, please feel free to just put them in the chat box and we'd be happy to talk about them. Or if you agree with the list, please, feel free to comment. Your feedback, of course, is always welcome and it's always helpful. So let's look at these challenges. So instead of talking about hypotheticals though today, what the what ifs or looking at our situation from a 30,000 foot level, what we're going to do today is Jaylyn and I are going to share some actual stories from clients that we've worked with in the past. We're going to discuss the challenges they faced and how they were able to alleviate those problems with the CloudLogic software solution. So those are the 5 main challenges. Let's move on to the next slide so that we can jump into these areas and address each one of them in detail. Challenge number 1, supply chain disruption. Boy, do we know what that is. How many of us have been in that position where our boss walks into our door, asks us a question, and our best answer is, well, I don't know, I'll look into it, I'll have to get back to you. There's nothing worse than that feeling of just not having the answer that you need when you need it. It's no fun when our boss and teammates are disappointed in our inability to deliver information and answers when it's needed the most. It just isn't available to us. So let me share a story about one of our clients who is shipping an oversized piece of equipment by sea from Turkey to Charleston. So they had booked the shipment, they confirmed that the shipment was loaded and it was on its merry way, until at one of the ports along the way, Marseille, the shipment was offloaded so that they could make room for some additional shipments. Remember, this is an oversized shipment. So unfortunately, the carrier loaded all those other shipments on and then realized that they were unable to reload the oversized shipment because they had just run out of room. Upon learning of this, the NVOCC did the right thing. They notified the client's buyer of the situation. They did that via email, and they offered options. They could wait for the next vessel, they could reroute or land bridge to another port. All those options would have been useful, but they all had different cost considerations. So the buyer really needed to be the one to decide on the appropriate course of action. Unfortunately, the buyer was on PTO and nobody was monitoring his emails. Needless to say, the shipment was late and chaos ensued. So how many times have we heard of or even experienced stories like that? What could have at least prevented it or at least mitigated the disruption? Well, having a solution that provides visibility into every milestone along the journey and having that information readily available to all interested parties would have allowed that organization to be quickly proactive with a solution, make a decision, thereby saving communication waste, saving effort, and ultimately, and more importantly, fulfilling the commitment downstream to their client. So the CloudLogix solution was developed specifically to solve those kinds of problems. We provide that visibility along with real-time event-driven notification whenever there's a disruption. Our system gives you greater control over your supply chain. There are just multiple ways to track an order. For example, you can track from a PO or sales order, from a carrier to a bill of lading number, a supplier, or even a date range. Basically, any reference that is attached to an order becomes a data point for tracking. Real-time visibility is everything. So now let me turn it over to my colleague, Jaylyn, to address the second challenge.
Thank you, Tom. As Bob mentioned, I'm Jaylyn Wallace, and I'm the VP of Product and Customer Success for CloudLogix. And I'm happy to talk to you today about challenge number 2, which is controlling freight spend. So freight spend issues arise when companies have excessive freight costs, usually due to people internally and externally not making the best shipping decisions with no enforcement or compliance. Lack of control over suppliers and outbound personnel results in out of control freight spend. So without insight into data, there's no way to monitor non-compliance when it comes to corporate guidelines or routing guides, for example. So a little story is we had a client that had very little control over expedited freight, air freight, etc. So this resulted in a lot of surprise invoices and a blown freight budget. So we implemented our system, which required an authorization code to basically unlock the premium service levels. This, along with other features, helped to result in a 45% decrease in freight spend. So for inbound shipments, our solution allows suppliers to release items for shipping, and that then gives our clients the ability to see exactly what suppliers are planning to do before the freight ships, so they can help to enforce business rules and avoid suboptimal decisions. For outbound shipping, CloudLogix allows shipping personnel to get a real-time view of estimated freight costs and delivery estimates so that they can make the best routing decision possible. So overall, we've worked to automate processes and bring visibility to shipping activity before freight moves. So ultimately, surprises can be avoided and better decisions can be made. So now I'll let my friend Tom take over challenge 3.
Thank you, Jaylyn. Challenge number 3 is the communication barrier. Communication barriers can, of course, occur for lots of different reasons. So let me just share another story. This story is all about a single point of failure. Unfortunately, we've all experienced something like this. So anyway, I was talking to a client early on in our engagement, and he shared this story with me. The production manager at his company was expecting an order that was needed that day so they could fulfill a customer commitment. And in passing, a sales rep said, "Hey, do you think that order we need is going to be here today, even with all this lousy weather?" So the production manager decided, I'm going to go check with the supply chain person, get an update. Well, they went to their office, and that person just happened to be away from her desk, just wasn't available. So he decided, okay, I'll just call the buyer. The buyer hadn't heard anything about any delays, but figured they better check. Buyer called the vendor, who said, well, we shipped it, it should be there. So from there, and for the next couple of hours, it was a loop of frustration with phone calls, trying to find out information. The reality was that the supply chain person had already called and confirmed that the shipment would be on time. She had no idea that multiple members of her team were frantically trying to confirm the order. Naturally, she didn't think it was necessary to tell everybody that everything was fine. So imagine the time and energy that was wasted on this distraction. Having too few eyes on the data led to multiple phone calls between departments and hours of management chaos. Again, the single point of failure is that this important information was not readily available in real time to all of the interested parties. Think about it. How many people wasted their time and energy on a problem that didn't really exist? The CloudLogix solution centralizes and socializes that data so it's readily available. Again, everybody that needs to see it can see it. And that gives you the opportunity to offer a proactive solution. In this case, they really didn't need to do anything. Unfortunately, they wasted a lot of valuable time and energy trying to solve a problem that didn't even really exist. So all companies live in silos. That's just the nature of how large organizations operate. That's fine. But what's really important is that we break down those barriers to communication that exist between them. So in this case, with the CloudLogic solution, the buyer, the production manager, the salesperson, any of them could have easily looked up the order and seen in the notes that everything was on schedule. They could have avoided wasting all that time and energy. Again, a single point of failure. Back to my friend Jaylene.
Thanks again, Tom. One of the other challenges in supply chains is the carrier and supplier performance. You have suppliers who are making routing decisions that aren't being communicated properly to the receiving facility, and they're not necessarily making the most cost-effective decision. You've also got carriers who might have delays that you don't know about in a timely manner, or additional charges or issues that happen throughout transit that people can't see. Or many times, this also equates to maybe a supplier shipping too early or too much product. There are so many things that can happen with inbound visibility and carrier performance that we just don't know about until it's too late. You can have all the processes and guidelines in the world, but without visibility into what's happening ahead of time, the process can still break. So for example, we had a customer who purchased over 100 aircraft door frames from China. This was a very large order for them, and they were only expecting to have a specific portion of the order coming per month. And instead, what happened was the manufacturer ended up shipping the order in its entirety, and the client didn't know about it. So next thing you know, they had over 100 door frames at their dock. They had no room for all of it, and furthermore, they weren't ready to pay for all that material just yet, because you know the invoice for the entire product order followed shortly thereafter. So with our solution, they would have seen exactly what type of shipment was registered to move, and they would have had an advanced warning or notice of what was coming in. So they could have either stopped it before it shipped, or they could have made proper arrangements to receive it. So as Tom mentioned, the goal is to socialize data so you can be proactive rather than depending on lagging indicators, telling stories that already happened. Back to you, Tom.
Thanks, Jalen. I remember that well. So finally, let's talk about insights and visibility, and particularly how they relate to compliance to your corporate guidelines, to freight invoices, and to controlling your spend. So this story is from a vice president of supply chain that was tasked with driving costs from their global supply chain. He wanted to, as you might imagine, consolidate their buying and have visibility into their freight usage and spend throughout their 7 North American facilities. He also wanted to have that visibility into their global vendors and their clients. So he moved into that role. He took over a situation where the shipping managers at all their sites, along with their vendors throughout the world, were just not following the corporate routing guide. They weren't paying any attention to their spending, and they weren't paying attention to the proper allocation of those costs. That, of course, led to freight invoices from unauthorized carriers, from unknown carriers, invoices that were not trackable, invoices that couldn't be audited for proper rate allocation. They had no data on parcel, truck, sea, or air freight. He was asking the questions: are we paying for premium freight services when they aren't required? Are we paying for freight costs that are not even really our responsibility? Well, nobody really knew. The VP had a lot of questions, but he just really wasn't getting any good answers. So after implementing the full CloudLogic suite, they were, of course, able to have critical data centralized, and they were able to socialize it, which allowed them to gain critical reporting that provided analysis of various trends. So they utilized our order management system to ensure supplier compliance to inventory levels and to routing compliance. They used our shipping system for carrier quoting for the best routing options. They were able to enforce corporate guidelines, which allowed them to consolidate their spending, which was his goal, and to measure supplier and carrier performance and compliance on a global reach. Finally, our invoicing module provided visibility into actual invoicing against quoted spot rates. It also automatically audited their freight bills against the applied rate. In the very first year, they were able to realize a $300,000 savings against their contracted rates with just one carrier. This was a carrier that had billed them $2 million that year. That's 15% savings in 1 year. So they were able to get one version of the truth. That led to significantly improved and informed decision-making. We all need one version of the truth. I'm going to turn this back over to Jaylin, and she's going to talk about our solutions.
Thank you. Excuse me. So With all the challenges that we've covered today so far, the good news is, CloudLogix, I'm proud to say, we've come up with a very robust solution that helps to address all these issues in one platform that complements a company's existing software. So essentially what we're doing by looking at this image that you see here is we're able to bring all the necessary data to the forefront that requires your action or attention. Our system is also role-based, so everyone sees only what they need to see and nothing that they don't. The goal is to make things as clear and simple as possible. So any answers that you need to find are usually available within one click from this dashboard. With our product, you're able to achieve end-to-end supply chain visibility for all your stakeholders on a need-to-know basis. You can manage process exceptions more easily, and you can see centralized data for better decision-making. So it's been my pleasure to speak with you all so far, and now I'd like to pass it back to Tom to discuss next steps.
Thanks again, Jalen. So what you've heard from us today is 5 very unique stories that our clients experienced in their supply chain. With each one of these clients, we sat down and did a full process review. We looked for opportunities to gain efficiencies and, of course, to drive out costs. So let's move on to the next part of the program. I want to thank you again for sharing some time with us, but please stick around as we still have a question and answer period in just a couple of minutes. But before we do that, let's talk about possible next steps. Firstly, you can reach out directly to me to start a conversation about your business unit supply chain solutions. I can be reached at tom.cagney@cloudlogix.com or call me directly on my mobile, 303-859-2890. We could also schedule a process review with our teams to identify top return on investment and benefit areas for your company. No charge for that service. We simply come in, we sit down with your team, trying to understand what your processes are, what your challenges are. And if we all agree that we can be helpful, we just move on to the next steps. You could also request a buyer's guide, or you could get a case study from us. After this, we're going to send you a follow-up email that's going to give you a link to this webinar recording so you can hear it over and over again if you'd like. It will also have links to download the buyer's guide and for a case study. So the buyer's guide is a great tool in case you've never had one or used one. It just helps define some of the key decision factors for making a buying decision. It helps identify the questions that you might have, questions you need to ask, and then you kind of get to the point where you really can define what your real needs are. Our case study, on the other hand, will share the story of how one of our clients was able to achieve a 45% rate reduction that Jalen had mentioned. And this was in the first year of deploying the CloudLogix solution. So we're happy to share what we think are pretty valuable tools to help with optimizing your supply chain. So thanks again. I'm now going to turn it back over to Mr. Jerkowski to do another poll, and then he will lead the question and answer session. Bob?
Thanks, Tom. Appreciate that very much. Here is another poll. If you would be so kind to participate, we appreciate that. And if you could, let me go ahead and launch this. Select one of the answers that you think is most appropriate. First of all, we really appreciate your participation today. And what we'd like to do is just get your feedback from the best practices that we talked about, the 5 areas of challenge and so forth. What next step would make sense from your perspective? Would it be to determine how to apply these best practices to your business? Does it make sense to look at a process review and determine where you have opportunities for gain, where you have gaps? Are you interested in the buyer's guide that Tom talked about, which is a roadmap, if you will, of questions and criteria that is most important in terms of supply chain visibility solutions? Would you like a demonstration of the CloudLogix platform, or would you like it to request a success story as demonstrated with return on investment? So just go ahead if you could and let us know what's important to you. What we'll do after today's webinar is make sure that we actually follow up with you and provide whatever material is going to help you on your journey to success this year. Now what we'd like to do is close that poll and open it up for Q&A. So please go ahead, if you could, post your questions for Tom and Jalen. And let's go ahead and in the time that we have today, let's answer some of your most pressing important questions. Okay, thank you, Mary. This is a question from Mary, Tom, and Jalen. And Mary says, can CloudLogic integrate with my accounting and ERP systems today? Give some thoughts to that and how difficult it is.
Sure, I can handle that one. So we actually have integrations experts on our staff, and we can integrate with any carrier, ERP, accounting software, or any other system tool that you have. So it's no trouble for us at all.
Perfect. Thank you, Jalen. This question is from Jeremy. Jeremy says, does my ERP system already do what you do?
I'll take that one. Well, Jeremy, most ERP systems certainly have most of your data. The challenge is that it tends to be siloed and thereby not readily available to all the real time. So in addition, although it may hold the data, the processes for inputting and retrieving that data, we all know it can be pretty tedious. CloudLogic socializes the data in real time to allow for that information to be shared throughout multiple silos and seen by all the interested parties. Basically, CloudLogic is an interface that allows your suppliers to send data to your ERP without giving them direct access to your ERP or business management system. You get data from internal and external users all in one place. Again, you don't give access to your internal system to those people, to those suppliers and carriers. Hope that helps.
Okay, this is another question, and this question says, how could I, as expedited asset-based carrier, benefit from integrating with CloudLogic?
I can take this one. So CloudLogic is completely carrier agnostic. I want to make that very clear. We manage all of our clients' carrier relationships. But basically by integrating with us already as a carrier, then you're already primed and ready to go. We also have so basically if we take on a client that you do business with already, then it takes 2 seconds to connect you guys and turn on the rates. Now, one thing that we will do is when we potentially have a new client, they will sometimes ask us for advice if they want to do business with new carriers. And what we will do is give them a list of everyone that we're integrated with. So basically you would be promoted along with any other carriers that we already have in our system as well.
That's great, Jalen. And George, thanks very much for asking that question. Okay, let's see if we can field just a couple more questions here. This one is from Raj. What milestones are available to track shipments?
I can take that one also. So of course we have all the standard tracking milestones that most carriers have, such as, booked, in transit, picked up, delivered, exceptions, etc. But we also have the capability of adding any additional milestones or notifications that you might want that might be custom to your specific business. So we will always accommodate anything that the carrier provides us. We will show that to you, and then we can add whatever additional layers you might want on top of that.
Perfect. Thank you, Jalen. Let's say I have one more question. This one is from Wilma. Wilma asks, how do I measure my ROI or return on investment?
I can get to that one. And thanks for the question. So our ROI calculation is kind of unique based on usage. The best method for calculating your return on investment is really for us to come in and do a process review and to do an analysis to determine a realistic ROI. We can provide that analysis based on the size and the usage of your organization, what tools you use, and there's just a variety of factors that can drive what your return on investment is. Whether it's a human resource, whether it's driving rates out with carriers, whether it's communication waste, all of that we can study and help you with. And there's no charge for that. There's really no charge for that. So we're happy to do it. Please feel free to email or call us, and we're happy to take care of that for you.
Thank you, Tom. Okay, so those are the questions that we wanted to cover today. We appreciate you sharing those questions with us. I wanted to end our webinar with some information for you. These are some of the key executives at CloudLogic, and a number of them will be following up with you today. Tom, here's Tom's phone number, his cell phone number, as well as his email address. You're more than welcome to reach out to him directly. Jalen, also the same in terms of really through and through understanding these industries in your industry, but also really understanding what's the key for customer success. So here's Jalen's information as well as her phone number. Dale McConnell is our Chief Revenue Officer, and Nick Ewell is our Business Development Manager. Both of them will be working diligently to follow up with you today after today's webinar, and make sure that you get the material, the information, the best practices that will be helpful as you're charting your course today for success. So on behalf of Tom, Jalen, and the entire CloudLogic organization, we'd like to thank you for attending and participating in today's webinar. We appreciate the opportunity to work with you, to serve you, and thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thank you, everybody.